Mom used a bottle that once contained Paraquat to store cooking oil. I said we should throw it out, but she insisted she had washed it, and washed it thoroughly. I told her that ingesting Paraquat causes immediate death, or at the very least, organ failure, but she just slapped me across the face and scolded me for getting a big head after a few years of schooling. I tossed that bottle of oil straight into the trash can, furious. My mother kicked me, fished the bottle out of the trash, and forced it into my mouth. She yelled, "Didn't you say it was poisonous? I'll just see if it kills you or not, you wasteful brat, ruining my good oil." After ingesting the oil, I died from poisoning. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my mother stored the cooking oil in the Paraquat bottle. 1. What are you staring at, you silly girl? Hold the bottle properly, you're always in a daze. I don't know who you take after. Mom gave my elbow a sharp nudge. I froze. Had I been reborn, and I had been reborn on the very day my mother used a Paraquat bottle to store cooking oil. In my previous life, my mother had used a bottle that once contained Paraquat to store cooking oil. I tried desperately to stop her, telling her that ingesting Paraquat could be fatal, and even if one survived, it would lead to organ failure. I tried to stop her from pouring the oil and wanted to throw the oil-filled bottle in the trash. This made her furious. She slapped me across the face and scolded me for being arrogant just because I'd had a few years of schooling, but back then, I just threw that bottle of Paraquat-laced oil straight into the trash can. Mom got even angrier. She kicked me, fished the bottle of oil out of the trash, and forced it into my mouth, yelling, "Didn't you say it was poisonous? Let's see if you die from it, you wasteful little brat. How dare you waste my oil, after drinking the oil?" I died from poisoning, yet Mom, linking arms with Dad, smiled happily and said, "Good riddance, now we can get the money from those two old fools. How else are we supposed to provide for our unborn son?" She was just a money-losing burden anyway. It was only at that moment the truth hit me. This had all been a scheme from the start. My mother saw me as a daughter, a future burden. So I was dumped at my grandparents' house the moment I was born. My grandparents had a huge fight with her over it. After my grandparents passed away, the government provided a compensation payment, and she has always had sinister designs on that money, to get that compensation money, to secure a future for the son she was carrying. They never intended for me to survive. 2. Mom, be careful, don't spill it, it would be such a waste. I snapped back to reality, my eyes fixed on the bottle. I watched as she poured the rapeseed oil into the old Paraquat container and couldn't help but smile. My mother looked at me as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she remained silent. I watched the freshly pressed rapeseed oil trickle, drop by drop, into that bottle which had once held Paraquat. Then, I watched her pour the oil into the wok. As it sizzled and crackled, I fought hard to contain the turmoil within me. At dinner that evening, Dad called out to me, "Vera, come and eat." Mom said impatiently, "Don't worry about whether she eats or not. If she wants to eat, she will. If not, forget it. She's nothing but a burden. It'd be better if she were dead. At least then we'd save on food and oil." The truth is, all these years, I've never truly felt cared for by them, all because I was born with neonatal pneumonia, and as a premature baby, I had to stay in an incubator for a month, costing them a lot of money. My mother had her heart set on a son, but I was born a girl, so, not long after I left the hospital, my mother dumped me at my grandparents' house and never looked back. To them, I was just an unwanted burden, a financial liability. Back then, they wouldn't visit me even once a year, and they never bought me new clothes for holidays or festivals. If it weren't for my grandparents passing away last year and the constant urging from relatives and friends, I would never have been taken back in by them. Even now that I'm back, they don't treat me all that well. I closed the book, took a deep breath, and opened the door to go out. I pulled over a chair and sat down. I had only glanced at the dishes on the table a few times when my mother shot me a dirty look and said, "What are you staring at? This meat is for your brother, you don't get any." After saying that, Mom patted her round, protruding belly, a broad smile on her face, as if the child inside was undoubtedly a son. I let out a cold, silent laugh inside. They had gone to great lengths to have a son, consulting doctors far and wide, trying every remedy. Now, after finally conceiving, they'd been to the hospital for a checkup and were told it was a boy. I stared at the large table of food, stir-fried in oil that had been stored in a Paraquat bottle, and gave a slight, wry twist of my lips. Mom glanced at me, then picked up a piece of meat and popped it into her mouth, her and Dad's eyes crinkling with laughter. I thought to myself, whether this child would even make it into the world was still up in the air. 3. After taking a piece of meat for herself, Mom served one to Dad, urging him to eat it while it was still hot, saying it wouldn't taste as good once it cooled down. She took a piece for herself, too. They were true carnivores. Out of the 5 or 6 dishes on the table, only one was a seaweed soup. The rest were all meat. I watched them, grabbed a big steamed bun, and stuffed it into my mouth. I had just picked up my chopsticks and hadn't even taken a bite yet when my mother smacked the back of my hand hard. "What do you think you're doing? Do you think this food is for you?" The sting on the back of my hand made me wince. I put down my chopsticks and, forcing a smile through the pain, said, "Mom's right. This food is for my little brother. I won't have any. You should eat more." "Mom, the more you eat, the more he'll grow in your belly. I'm fine with just the steamed bun and seaweed soup." With that, I ladled a big spoonful of the seaweed soup into my bowl. I ate the steamed bun with the seaweed soup quickly. After hearing what I just said, my mother stuffed several more pieces of meat into her mouth. They kept discussing what to buy, what to add to the house, what formula to use, what diapers to get, and what brand of clothes to dress the baby brother in once he was born. Yet, all these years, I have never worn a single piece of clothing they bought. So, in their hearts, the child in her womb is their true flesh and blood, while I am just an outsider, in my past life. For the sake of my mother and the child in her womb, I steeled my heart and threw that bottle of oil into the trash. In return, I was brutally beaten. I will never forget the scene, my mother forcing my head down, shoving it into that trash bin, and pouring the oil into my mouth. My good intentions were thrown back in my face. I was branded a good-for-nothing who had wasted her precious oil. Since that's how it is, why should I bother warning them that using a Paraquat bottle for oil could be fatal? That's their fate. It's not worth risking my own life to interfere. For my parents were deep in an animated discussion. My dad, getting excited, poured himself a drink, and they kept enthusiastically talking about all the things they would do once their son was born. Meanwhile, I quickly polished off one large steamed bun and immediately reached for a second. My mom stared at the second bun in my hand and said, "What are you, a pig, eating 2 of those?" It was my dad who spoke up to my mom. "It's just a steamed bun, let her have it. She can eat the bun, and our son and I will have the meat." Perhaps it was my dad's phrase, "our son and I," that made my mother's heart feel a little warmer again. She didn't say anything, so I quickly ate. After dinner, my mom asked my dad to take her shopping for things the baby brother in her belly would need later, and she told me to do the dishes. Then, as my mom was about to throw away the leftover dishes, I grabbed her arm. Looking at the unfinished food on the table and swallowing hard, I said, "Mom, don't throw it away. It's such a shame. Such a waste, to toss out a whole table of food like this. You and your brother shouldn't eat leftovers, but Dad can, right, Mom?" I said these words calmly, but inside, I was sneering. Since they're so fond of meals cooked over a Paraquat oil bottle fire, they can have their fill. 5. After they left, I washed the dishes and then scrubbed my hands thoroughly with soap several times. Once I was done, I went back to my room to continue working on my practice problems. In my past life, I didn't even take the high school entrance exam. This time, I'm determined to study hard and get into a good high school. Time flew by as I was lost in my homework, and I didn't even notice when they got home. It was only when I was asleep that I suddenly heard a noise from the living room. I heard my dad cry out anxiously, "Mabel, what's wrong? You're scaring me." I came out of my room to see my dad holding my mom, who was retching uncontrollably and convulsing. My dad kept shouting my mom's name. Seeing me standing there frozen, he yelled at me, "Vera, what are you just standing there for? Go get help. Do you want to see your mom and your brother get hurt?" I mumbled an "okay" and shuffled slowly out the door to find someone, but by that time, everyone in the village was already asleep. I went back inside and told my dad I couldn't find anyone. He glared at me with a look so vicious it seemed like he wanted to kill me. I just kept my head down and said nothing. In the end, my dad had no choice but to take my mom to the hospital on his electric scooter. It was quite a struggle to get my mom's rather round figure onto the scooter. before they left, he told me to quickly pack some of my mom's things and bring them to the hospital. The hospital is over 10 kilometers from our home. Are you expecting me to walk there? That's ridiculous. Still, I packed up my mother's things before I could even leave. My father came back. He grabbed me by the collar and demanded, "The doctor found Paraquat in your mother's system. How could that be in our house?" I hunched my shoulders and pointed at the bottle of oil in the kitchen. When my dad saw the bottle, his face suddenly went pale with fright. Despite my dad's obvious tension, I said calmly, "Mom said this bottle is perfect for oil. What's the problem, Dad?" My father, his face deathly pale, took me to the hospital again. Before I even reached the emergency room doors, I could hear my mother's voice, "Doctor, I'm carrying a son, you have to save my boy." I saw my mother frantically grabbing the doctor's white coat. It turned out that after the tests, they found Paraquat in her system. The doctor recommended an early C-section because Paraquat is highly toxic. Even with stomach pumping, it would inevitably affect the unborn child. However, my mother kept insisting that the baby wasn't full-term and an early delivery was absolutely out of the question. She even pointed at me, saying I was the premature one. Not only did I cost them a fortune, but I also grew up sickly and frail. But I want to say, the reason I'm so thin is because I never had enough to eat growing up. I was constantly underfed. What does that have to do with being born premature? In the end, with no other choice, the doctor arranged for my mother to have her stomach pumped. Even after that, the doctor still recommended a C-section to avoid harming the baby. But my mother absolutely refused to sign the consent form. Without the family's consent, the doctors would never force a C-section. So, the baby was still in my mother's womb when she was admitted to the hospital. I had been out for a stroll, and when I returned to the ward, the two of them were in the middle of an argument. "Mabel, have you lost your mind? That's the bottle I used for Paraquat this afternoon. What were you thinking, using it for rapeseed oil? I washed it thoroughly. I thought it was fine. You're going to scare our son," talking so loudly. I saw my mother rubbing her swollen belly, her face full of grievance. Seeing this, my father fell silent. Then the two of them started whispering again. It turned out they planned to go ask the village's eccentric shaman woman for some holy water. There really was such a shaman in our village. Last time, when an uncle in the village went mad, she prepared some so-called holy water for him, and he miraculously recovered afterwards. After a long discussion, Dad stood up to leave and told me to stay behind to look after Mom. "Mom, I have school tomorrow. You should let Dad take care of you." "What school? Call in sick. Is your lousy school more important than your brother?" My dad chimed in, agreeing with my mom. "Vera, you stay and look after your mother. I have important things to do back home, and I have to work tomorrow. If I don't earn money, what will you all eat and drink?" With that, he left, leaving just my mother and me alone in the 3-bed ward. In the dead of night, I was sleeping soundly in a chair when my mother shook me awake. She told me to fetch the doctor, saying she felt nauseous and terrible. When the doctor arrived, he urged an immediate C-section, but my mother gripped the bed rails, refusing point-blank to go to the operating room. She insisted on waiting for my father. I knew what she was really waiting for. That holy water from the village mystic. "Ms. Mabel, even though you didn't directly ingest the Paraquat, consuming oil that was mixed with it is still extremely dangerous. If you continue to ignore our advice and something happens to your baby, the hospital will not be held responsible. My son will be fine. I washed that oil bottle clean, so there's nothing to worry about. Stop trying to scare me. You're just after my money." "I know it. Let me tell you, he's not full-term yet, and I won't let him be born now. Staying inside for one more day is definitely better than being out here." After my mother had shouted the doctor out of the room, I ran out and called after him. I suggested to them that perhaps my mother could sign a liability waiver. That way, if anything were to happen in the future, the hospital would bear no responsibility. I watched as the doctor stared at me in astonishment. When the doctor came in with the liability waiver, my mother was too upset to sign it. I held her hand and said, "Mom, listen, if you sign this, the doctors won't make you have a C-section. My little brother can stay safe and sound inside you a while longer. Didn't you always say it's better for a baby to stay in the womb longer? Look at me. I was born premature, and I cost you guys a fortune. Mom, just sign it. If you do, he won't be a preemie, and you'll save a ton of money." My mother, upon hearing that signing this document would stop them from insisting on a C-section, hastily picked up the pen and signed. The morning after signing, my mother called my father to ask if he had gotten the elixir, but his phone was unreachable. My mother then called our neighbor, Auntie Wang. A short while later, when the neighbor called back, she shouted into the phone, "Mabel, it's terrible. Your Clyde has collapsed and is foaming at the mouth." My father was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. At one point, the doctor came out and bluntly said, "We can save him, but multiple organs are failing. He may be paralyzed for life." Upon hearing this, my mother's legs went weak. She stared at the operating room door for a long moment, then suddenly charged into the emergency room. 6. Once inside, my mother rushed to the operating table and began frantically pulling at my father. "Who was lying there? Where's the holy water? Did you bring it? Where is it hidden?" When the doctors and nurses rushed in, my mother was still frantically searching my father's person, but she found nothing on him. "Ms. Mabel, your husband is still in critical condition. You need to leave the room." But my mother, unable to find that holy water, was acting as if she'd lost her mind. In the end, she was given a sedative and taken back to the ward, after settling my mother in. The nurse patted my shoulder and asked, "Sweetie, is there anyone else at home, any relatives? It's too much for you to look after both of them by yourself. The maternity ward and the gastroenterology department are on different floors." I looked at my mother, who was now sleeping in the hospital bed after receiving the sedative, and shook my head at the nurse. "I'm the only one left in the family. All those aunts and uncles, my parents had a huge falling out with every last one of them at my grandparents' funeral. Back then, to save money for their unborn son's future, my parents not only skimped on expenses for grandma's funeral, what's worse, they even considered skipping a service altogether and just having her cremated and buried." Because of this incident, those relatives had a huge, heated argument with my parents. After the funeral, my parents took me home, and from then on, they cut off all contact with those relatives. If they found out now that my mom brought this on herself, I bet they'd be laughing their heads off. I went to see my dad. He was lying there, pale and lifeless. I remembered the fine wine and food from that night. My father ate a lot. Perhaps, as the doctor said, he was physically strong, so the poison took effect more slowly. The next day, my mother came to her senses, grabbed my arm, and asked, "Is your father awake? Where's my holy water? Where is my son's holy water?" Seeing that I remained silent, she started cursing me again. "It's all your fault, you good for nothing. The poison in that Paraquat bottle was so strong, and you didn't say a word. Did you deliberately want my son to get hurt? I paid for all your schooling, and you still didn't speak up. You jinx, you wastrel. If anything happens to my son, I will never let you off the hook." When the nurse came at noon to press for my father's hospital payment, my mother was reminded of the compensation money from my grandparents. "Vera, hurry up and use that compensation money from those two old fools to pay the hospital bill." "Mom, where would I get that money? Didn't all of Grandma and Grandpa's compensation go towards my tuition? You and Dad haven't given me any money for years. How could I possibly have any left?" As soon as I said that, the other woman in the room shot my mother several glances. Probably afraid her own misdeeds would come to light, my mother shot me a glare, handed me the money, and told me to go pay the hospital bill. I took the money and let out a bitter, silent laugh. She and my father had been coveting that money for ages. They'd already turned the room upside down looking for it, but I was absolutely not going to hand that money over. When I returned to the ward after paying the hospital bill, my mother said she wanted to be discharged. She was going home to look for where my father had hidden the holy water, but just as my mother was about to leave the hospital, a nurse rushed over to tell me that my father had regained consciousness and was muttering the words, "holy water," over and over. Upon hearing this, my mother didn't even bother to put on her shoes. She dragged her heavy frame and hurried as fast as she could towards my father's room. I saw my father trembling as he pulled a small bottle from the crumpled bag beside him. He shoved it into my mother's arms and said, "Wife, drink this, quickly." The shaman said, "If you drink this, our son will be all right." Without a second thought, my mother quickly opened that small bottle and gulped down its contents. After drinking it, my mother and father hugged each other and laughed happily. I stood at the doorway of the hospital room and let out a cold, disdainful snort. 7. The day my father regained consciousness, my mother insisted he be discharged from the hospital, saying the medical bills were too expensive and that the money should be saved for the son in her womb. My father, agreeing with my mother, also strongly demanded to be discharged. I happily helped them pack their things. Once they were discharged, I could finally go to school. I couldn't have been happier. As we were leaving, a few nurses behind us were whispering among themselves. How can there be such a strange person in the world, willing to throw their own life away for their son? Whether that child will survive is still unknown. Director Young recommended a C-section, but they insisted the baby wasn't full term and refused. They wanted to keep the baby inside for a few more days. But it's Paraquat. I suspect that even with stomach pumping, the toxins have already spread to the vital organs. That poor little girl, how could any parent be like that? I was holding their things, fully expecting them to wait for me so we could share a cab home, but by the time I had gathered all our belongings and picked up the medication, they had already left me behind at the hospital and gone. When I finally got home again, I saw my father, his face pale, cooking a meal for my mother. The moment she saw me, my mother tossed a grape in my direction and said, "You're so slow, you silly girl." I watched that dark, purplish grape roll past my feet. I stared at it for a moment, then picked it up. Suddenly, I took a few steps forward, shoved the grape into my mother's mouth, and said calmly, "Mom, this hospital stay cost a fortune. It's a shame to waste such a nice grape." Just as my mom was so furious she wanted to spit out that grape and was about to hit me, I snatched the whole plate of grapes from her hand first. I ate a few right in front of her, smiled, and said, "So sweet." My mom was livid. She picked up a small stool from the floor and hurled it at me. I dodged to the side, and the stool crashed onto the ground. "Mom, mind the prenatal education. If the baby is born with a bad temper, you'll have a hard time later." With that, I picked up the plate of grapes, went into my room, and locked the door. Outside the door, my mom was yelling for my dad, telling him to come and give me a beating. They tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge because I had locked it. I stared at the plate of grapes, eating them carefully, but the burst of sweetness in my mouth still made me smile. 8. I haven't had any since my grandparents passed away. Just as I opened my workbook to start on the problems, I could hear my mom losing her temper outside my door again. The consequence of snatching that plate of grapes was that they didn't call me for dinner that night. Fine, no dinner then. That whole plate of grapes was enough to fill me up anyway. The mock exam is tomorrow. And I still have to focus on my revision. In my past life, I missed the high school entrance exam. This time around, I'm determined to study hard and get great results. The next day, when I went to school, I applied to become a boarding student. My homeroom teacher was aware of my family situation, so when I brought up boarding, she helped me with the application right away. She gave my shoulder a reassuring pat and told me to come to her if I ever needed anything. I could see her hesitation. The words caught in her throat. I knew what she wanted to say, but I just told her that nothing would distract me from my studies right now. For over a week after that, I stayed at the school dormitory. My parents didn't reach out to me once. I studied late into the night every day and was up again at dawn, leaving me no time to dwell on anything else. I had thought this quiet would last until after my high school entrance exams. After all, my mother's due date was still over a month away, however. With just 20 days left until my high school entrance exams, my mom was hospitalized. They said her water broke suddenly, because she was quite overweight and the baby was in a breech position. A natural delivery was too difficult, so she had to have a C-section. That very night, she gave birth to a son via cesarean section, a big, healthy baby boy weighing a hefty 8 approximately 4 kilograms. However, the child had one leg shorter than the other, and his mouth was also twisted. My mother held the child, crying and screaming, accusing the doctor of being a quack. She said all the prenatal checkups were normal, so how could she have given birth to a disabled child? My father hit the doctor, shouting accusations about whether he had tampered with our son. The scene was utter chaos. Even the hospital security guards couldn't restrain my father, so in the end, the hospital had no choice but to call the police. The farce only came to an end when the police took my father away. By the time I rushed to the hospital, my mother was making a scene at the nurse's station, sitting on the floor and cradling her disabled son in her arms. She was cursing non-stop. "It's all you quacks' fault for making my son like this. You have to pay for what you've done to my boy. Listen to me. If you can't cure my son, I'll sue you and shut this whole hospital down, my mother sobbed. Her words laced with venom as she kept crying and cursing, spotting me in the crowd. My mother suddenly sprang to her feet and charged over, clutching her precious son with one arm while grabbing a fistful of my hair with the other. Vera, where did you run off to? Go on, give these people a piece of your mind, look at your brother, this is all their fault. I wrenched her hand away, took a step back, and pointed an accusing finger at her. Mom, that's enough, you're the one who ingested something with paraquat in it. The doctors told you to have an early C-section. And you refused, now you want to blame them. Besides, didn't you drink the holy water from the shaman? Why is my brother still like this? I said calmly, but my mother was furious. Vera, what nonsense are you talking about? What holy water? It was the doctors in this hospital who made my son like this. They have to compensate us for the damages. My mother caused such a scene that the hospital was at a loss. When security finally arrived, she was still sitting on the floor. Refusing to get up, the hospital director directly showed her the liability waiver she had signed at the time. My mom may not have much formal education, but she can still read, I said calmly beside her. Mom, it's right here in black and white, with your own signature. Even if you make a scene or take them to court, they won't acknowledge it. My mom grew even angrier. I grabbed her wrist and whispered in her ear, Mom, since you signed this, the normal channels are closed to us. But I think you could make a video. These days, everyone loves watching videos. If you pour your heart out on a live stream, you might even gain some followers. Who knows, it could lead to a nice little windfall. My mom stared at me with suspicion. I suppressed the smile that was tugging at the corners of my mouth. That was quite the special gift I gave my mom. I said I had other things to do and left. My mom actually wanted to stop me from going. But the baby boy in her arms just wouldn't stop crying. 9. That very night, I discovered my mom had created an account and started a live stream from the hospital room, holding her baby boy and sobbing her heart out. I knew she would do this. After all, she dotes on her son and is greedy for money. I saw people in the live stream defending my mom, and by playing the victim, she attracted a huge number of followers. Many people sent her gifts, claiming it was to help her son. My mom was sobbing and making accusations against the hospital. Within just a few days, her follower count soared past 100,000, tasting success. She grew even more brazen. After 3 days in the hospital, my mother was discharged, although my father had hit someone. The hospital staff, perhaps out of pity for their situation, chose not to press charges against him. So, after my mother went to the police station to sign some papers, my father was able to come home. After my mom came home, my dad went to see the village shaman again. The shaman said my younger brother would be perfectly fine once he turned 1 month old, and that he just hadn't filled out yet. Then, they fed the newborn a bottle of so-called holy water. They were both completely taken in by the shaman's lies, unable to see the truth, and after getting a taste of the rewards from live streaming, my mom even persuaded my dad to quit his job and join her in doing live broadcasts. Using a school computer, I posted a short video on a platform showing my mother drinking holy water in the hospital. The internet exploded instantly. Of course, things got even juicier. The hospital later published the liability waiver my mother signed on their official website, along with her medical records showing she had her stomach pumped recently for ingesting paraquat. They even released footage of doctors and nurses urging her to have an early C-section. Combined with my video of her drinking the holy water, netizens were instantly sent into a frenzy. My mother was so caught up in the joy of making money from her live stream that she was completely oblivious to the fact that the entire internet was roasting her. That evening, during my mother's live stream, netizens flooded into the chat to condemn her actions. Up until then, they had firmly believed my brother's disability was caused by hospital negligence and had supported my mother's quest for justice. The moment that video was released, public opinion did a complete 180. The live chat was filled with a barrage of insults directed at my mom. My God, how can someone be like this? Is the streamer out of their mind, using a paraquat bottle to store oil, and now their child is disabled? They totally deserved it. The hospital told you to get a C-section and you refused. Now you're turning around and blaming them. You even signed a liability waiver. How disgusting. This is absolutely revolting. Drinking some magic water. Do they even have a brain? Streamer, give us back our donation money. My mom saw things were going south and, in a panic, quickly shut down the live stream. Then, she and my dad holed up in their room, cursing out the netizens for being awful and cursing me out for being no good either. Listening to their tirade, I locked my door. I'm going back to school tomorrow to focus on my studies. Let them sort out their own mess. The next morning, as I was getting ready to leave for school, my mom blocked the doorway, holding her son, and asked, "Vera, was it you who posted that video? Did you tamper with it?" I sneered inwardly. They weren't completely clueless after all. Mom, if that's what you think, what could I possibly have done? I just brought the truth to light. Hearing that, my mother suddenly rushed over to hit me, shouting, "Vera, I knew it was you, you little brat. We're your parents. Are you doing this because you can't stand to see us make money?" Mom, how can you say that? You making money doesn't mean I get any of it. My tuition came from my grandparents' savings, and I haven't eaten a single meal at home in ages. You haven't supported me for years. What does your income have to do with me? Besides, I only told the truth. What did I do wrong? Just as my mother was about to hit me again, the baby boy in her arms started crying. I looked at that twisted little mouth, gave a faint smile, and walked out of the house. 10. The situation has changed dramatically. Some netizens went to the hospital to investigate. Upon learning that my mother had indeed given birth to a disabled child against all advice, they one by one lost all sympathy for her. Other netizens even went to our village to ask around. Those relatives who had been scolded by my parents in the past now stood firmly against them, accusing my parents of being inhuman, saying they were out of their minds for chasing a son while neglecting their own daughter. With this conclusive evidence, my parents faced a torrent of online abuse. The account with over 100,000 followers was also banned, and all the funds were frozen, making withdrawals impossible. Meanwhile, I was in the classroom, buried in my work, in the high school entrance exam just over 10 days away. I was determined to show the world what I was made of. Thanks to the backlash from those netizens, my parents backed off for a few days, and I was able to take the exam without any further trouble. After the high school entrance exams, I went back home. I took my household registration booklet. Ever since I was born, they had registered my residency under my grandparents' names, and back in the day, in order to marry my mother, my father had also transferred his own household registration from my grandparents to my mother's family. I finished packing my bags and saw my parents' half-open bedroom door. Inside, they were playing with their precious son. I could only manage a wry smile. I moved into my grandparents' old house. It was simple, but it felt like home. The very next day after I moved in, Aunt Wang from next door called to tell me the court had seized our family home. For the sake of their precious son, my parents had spent a fortune on holy water from a fortune teller and taken out numerous online loans. Now, with their live streaming account banned, they're facing a torrent of abuse from across the internet. My father lost his job again. Yet their precious son remained the same after his first month, occasionally suffering from convulsions and vomiting. After a hospital examination, it was found that this 1-month-old infant was already showing signs of organ failure. My parents sought medical help far and wide for their beloved son, incurring massive debts. When they couldn't repay the online loans, the bank foreclosed on our family home. When Auntie Wang, our neighbor, told me all this, I felt nothing. In this new life, all of this is they're just deserts. Meanwhile, my high school entrance exam results were released. I scored highly, and to get away from them, I applied to a prestigious high school far from home. Years later, I heard that my father was in a car accident and became disabled, and my mother's precious son, the one she doted on, was also becoming more and more of a wreck. But none of that has anything to do with me. They did actually reach out to me once, but my mother just started yelling at me, demanding money, completely fixated on that compensation payout for my grandparents. After I yelled back, she just kept harassing me, calling my phone non-stop. Later, I changed my phone number. I cut off all contact. They never treated me as a daughter, and I won't treat them as parents either. I don't care what becomes of them. My own life is just beginning. I'm going to look ahead and strive to live my best life. Story 2. After raising my adopted son, he actually broke my leg and threw me into a desolate house in the extreme cold of the apocalypse. I questioned him why. He laughed and threw a family photo in my face. If it weren't for you, my mom wouldn't have to be the woman behind my dad all her life and suffer grievances for a lifetime. Oh my, it turned out that the woman who had always been said to be my husband's mistress really had a relationship with them, the father and son, in this new life. I'm going all out, the good wife persona can go to hell, and that ungrateful family will all die by my hand. 1. My adopted son, Alex, is in the first grade now, and it's the time to cultivate his study habits. I'm also his homeroom teacher, so I naturally pay extra attention to him. However, my mother-in-law and husband, relying on the more than 200 square meter demolition house we have, look down on others all day long. They fantasize that after getting millions, they won't have to worry about food and drinks for the rest of their lives. They don't take their son's studies seriously either. Our Alex will soon be a rich second generation. By then, we can spend some money and send him abroad. It's more prestigious than going to a domestic university. What your grandma said is right. We won't do this mental arithmetic anymore. Whether your mom gets angry or not, we'll just ignore her. My husband and mother-in-law chimed in. Alex immediately hid behind them and stuck out his tongue at me, giggling, la la la, I'm making mom angry. The 7-year-old Alex was still making faces at me. I went up and slapped the back of his head. I also grabbed a strand of his hair. The room was filled with the child's loud crying and my mother-in-law's furious scolding. I turned a deaf ear to them, holding the hair of Andrew that I had kept before. I also took the hair of the father and son and went to the testing agency. It would take a few days to do the paternity test. During this time, I moved back to my parents' home. The three of them, the grandmother, the father, and the son, thought that I would take the initiative to go home after being in a fit of pique for a few days. They had no idea that at this moment, my disgust for them had reached its peak. Who would have thought that I was lucky enough to be reborn, too, in my previous life? Andrew and his mother always opposed me. They thought that I was too eager in educating Alex and had a utilitarian mentality of comparing him with other children. Other children don't have the good fortune that our Alex has. If they don't work hard, they'll end up sweeping the streets. After we get the demolition money, even if Alex does nothing and just waits for the bank interest, it will be higher than other people's salaries. My mother-in-law often said these words, as if she thought that the bank would give her whatever interest she wanted. Influenced by his mother, Andrew was also not active at work. He spent all day asking about the demolition. He also swiped his credit card in advance to buy a car and an expensive phone. Our usual expenses increased geometrically. He often treated his colleagues and friends to meals. They either went to Haidaleo or Jin Qian Bao, a high-end restaurant. He squandered all of his salary every month, for the past half year. I had been supporting all the expenses at home. As a result, more than half of the demolition money was used to pay off the debts. Influenced by my mother-in-law and husband, my adopted son, Alex, also hated me deeply. After graduating from university and working at the Meteorological Bureau, Alex was lucky enough to learn in advance about the arrival of the extreme cold apocalypse. He took all the remaining demolition money at home to buy a villa. Saying that he wanted to build an apocalypse fortress, Alex told me that the apocalypse would come on December 31st, 2024, and asked me to move to Haishur in advance after the summer vacation. I believed him. In fact, the extreme cold weather arrived in February, on the 23rd day of the 12th lunar month, on the first day of the sudden snowstorm. I was worried whether my mother-in-law and husband, who had gone to give Alex New Year's goods, could arrive safely. I didn't know that they had left me alone in the county town on the pretext of giving New Year's goods. The reason why they chose to build the apocalypse fortress in the urban area 300 kilometers away from the county town was to get rid of me. Not only that, but they also disposed of all the remaining food at home and took away the bank cards and cash. On the third day of the snowstorm, the water, electricity, and heating were all cut off. I was alone, miserable, and helpless. I could only hide in the vegetable cellar, which had the highest temperature, with my power bank and phone. When the New Year's bell rang, Alex video called me. I thought that he had a change of heart and was going to save me, but he said, "Mom, you don't really think that I would be grateful to you, do you? You were never really good to me, you just wanted to satisfy your vanity among your colleagues with my good grades." In the video, I also saw a woman who looked 7 or 8 points similar to him. She leaned in my husband Andrew's arms behind Alex and smiled happily. "How is this possible? You were picked up by your dad from the orphanage." Hearing my words, Alex laughed out loud. You're so stupid. Why would my dad pick up someone else's child to raise? I'm his biological son. My mind was in chaos. Before I died, I still remembered the sneer of this ungrateful person. You fool, in your next life, be someone else's mom. 3. Since I was reborn, I would never follow the same path as in my previous life. A few days later, I got the result and took the initiative to go home. I went back and directly asked Andrew for a divorce. Divorce, Emma, are you crazy? Andrew looked shocked and sneered. You're a woman, how dare you talk about divorce? Have you ever thought about how you would live without me? I slapped the paternity test result on Andrew's face and retorted without showing any weakness. There are plenty of two-legged men in the world. You're a piece of trash who had an affair. I'm clean and honest. I'll live better without you. Andrew stared at me with his bull-like eyes. When he saw the content of the paternity test, his expression changed instantly. He questioned me where I got the paternity test and said that I even resorted to faking it in order to get a share of his property in the divorce. I retorted, then tell me which orphanage you picked up Alex from. Do you still have the adoption papers? Andrew fell silent. However, my mother-in-law, who came over after hearing our argument, vowed to stand by her son. She even took out Alex's adoption certificate from the locked drawer. I took it and glanced at it. After confirming that it was the one Andrew had given me before, I quickly took a photo and sent it to my friend. Then I folded the original and stuffed it into my bag. You had an affair during our marriage and forged the adoption certificate to deceive your wife and make her raise your illegitimate son. Andrew, if I take you to court, how do you think the judge will sentence you? For Andrew tried to snatch the certificate from me, but I wasn't afraid at all. If you lay a hand on me, I can also accuse you of domestic violence. Andrew broke into a cold sweat. He probably thought that I would never find out about Alex's true identity. He was caught off guard for a moment, but he quickly calmed down. Emma, after all these years of our marriage, don't you trust my character? It's not what you think. He explained that he was drunk and didn't know how he ended up sleeping with another woman. I'm also a victim. If I didn't cherish our relationship and was afraid that you would blame me if you knew about it, why would I go to the trouble of hiding it from you? Andrew and I both worked at the county primary school. The difference was that he was the grade director and I was the homeroom teacher. He was 4 years older than me, joined the school earlier, had rich work experience, and had won the Excellent Cadre Award. I was still on an external employment contract and had to continue taking exams to apply for a permanent position. Andrew showed the patience he usually used when giving ideological guidance to the teachers and tried to persuade me. He also tried to deceive me with sweet words, but I, who had died once, had a heart harder than iron. This is the divorce agreement. If you agree, sign it. If not, we'll see each other in court. I believe that Andrew wouldn't hesitate to divorce me if it was just a simple divorce, but I insisted that Andrew compensate me with a house. Because of this house, Andrew showed his true colors and had a falling out with me. He cursed me, saying that I was daydreaming and as delusional as a toad wanting to eat a swan. This house is my premarital property. Why should you get a share, Emma? If you're really feeling unbalanced, I can give you all the savings we've accumulated over the years. There's a total of 100,000 yuan on this card. Andrew threw the card at my feet as if he was giving alms to a beggar. I was so angry that I laughed. Since you brought this illegitimate son, Alex, home, it's been 6 years. I've been in charge of his daily life and early education. For 6 years, even if you hired a nanny, it would cost more than 100,000 yuan. Why do you think I would accept your disrespectful charity? Moreover, this 100,000 yuan also contains my hard-earned money. Don't forget that this card was opened in my name. I bent down and picked up the card. This is what I deserve. It's not up to you to give it to me. You're so shameless. Andrew's fingers trembled with anger. He lost his temper and started acting recklessly. He threatened that he would suggest to the school to cancel my application for a permanent teaching position. Don't forget how you got this job at the school. There are plenty of graduating normal students who can replace you at any time. I didn't care at all. Fine, you want to use your personal connections to get back at me, right? Then I'll report you to the Education Bureau for having an affair during our marriage. You're a teacher with corrupt moral character. Let's see if the principal will fire you to protect his own position. Andrew was completely enraged by me and shouted, Emma, you really want to fight me to the death, don't you? I took a step forward and looked him in the eye. saying word by word, "You're wrong. I want the stinky fish of yours to never have a chance to turn things around. Andrew, you've been playing me for 6 years. Even a clay figurine has some temper. Why should I let you have an easy time?" Andrew had never seen me so fierce. The veins on his face bulged, and his eyes were filled with anger and fear when he looked at me. In a panic, he compromised and signed the divorce agreement. He also warned me, trying to maintain his dignity, that I'd better resign voluntarily, otherwise I would suffer at his hands. I put away the divorce agreement and turned around gracefully. I was afraid that if I said one more word to him, I wouldn't be able to control my urge to kill and set things on fire. Andrew thought that I was just angry about him having a mistress and wanted justice. He had no idea that this was just the first step of my revenge. I died so miserably in my previous life. None of the 3 of them, including that mistress I had never met, were innocent. 5. On the day I resigned from the school, Andrew pretended to be kind and came to help me move the boxes. "Emma, after all, we were husband and wife. If you encounter any difficulties in the future, remember to come to me. Don't worry, I'm not the kind of petty person who can't stand to see my ex-wife doing well." I glanced at my colleagues who were watching the scene. I unceremoniously exposed his affair during our marriage and revealed his hypocritical face. Later, a close colleague told me that Andrew invited people to dinner and got drunk. He boasted that he would prevent me from getting a job in any school in the county. He really thought that I resigned from the school because I was worried that he would make things difficult for me. If it weren't for what happened in my previous life, I might have thought, just like him, that getting a position in a primary school was the best way out for me. But now, with the memories of my previous life, I seem to have grasped the password to survival. This year, the Xingdongfang Education Group was on the rise. I applied for a job there and successfully passed the interview with my years of teaching experience. In the following time, without the burden of the child, I was able to handle my work with ease. In just 3 years, my annual salary had exceeded 1 million yuan. The training courses in the institution were concentrated on weekends and after school. When I was busy, I rarely paid attention to other things. But I also knew that Andrew had brought Alex's biological mother home less than 2 months after our divorce. Her name was Amelia, and she was the assistant manager of a 3-star hotel. I heard that Andrew's mother opposed it, thinking that having a woman from the hotel in the house was a disgrace to the family. But no one listened to the old woman. Andrew even held a grand banquet. The scene on the wedding day was more lively than ours had been. More than half of the colleagues from the school went. Amelia also invited many hotel executives and big bosses to attend. It should have been a happy occasion, but halfway through, a boss got drunk. He grabbed Amelia's hand and insisted on chatting with her. He even touched her buttocks indecently. I've always thought that Amelia is not a good person. We don't discriminate against her profession, but just think about it. She had a child for the director when she wasn't married. Can her intentions be pure? Aurora, a former colleague from the finance department, chattered with me on the phone for a long time. She said that she was sitting at the table closest to the boss. Amelia's look of half-heartedly refusing and half-welcoming made her want to vomit. "It's a pity that you didn't go that day, Emma. You missed a good show," I replied to her. "After the divorce, we're 2 different families. We have nothing to do with each other from now on." Later, I didn't take the initiative to contact my former colleagues, and I didn't hear any news about Andrew. When I suddenly saw Andrew's figure in the office building, I was stunned for a moment, thinking that I had seen wrongly. 6. Andrew had gained weight. He had a round belly and looked greasy. Amelia was just as Aurora had described. She was dressed fashionably and had heavy makeup on her face. Her hair was permed. When she spoke, she habitually twisted her waist. "Mom, it's Mom." When I was about to step into the elevator, Alex suddenly shouted at me. Then he shook off Amelia's hand holding him and ran towards me. "Mom, it's me, Alex." I looked at Alex, who had grown half a head taller. My heart was filled with complex emotions, and I felt that all my efforts in raising him were in vain. I had raised him for 2 lifetimes, giving him all my heart, but he was more eager for my death than anyone else. "Mom," Alex was still calling me persistently, but I remained indifferent. Andrew and Amelia also looked at me. Andrew had a pleasant expression at first, but he frowned when he saw me. He looked me up and down. When he saw the Xingdongfang work badge pinned to my chest, his face turned even uglier. Amelia rushed over as if facing a formidable enemy and pulled Alex behind her. Alex, how can you call someone else mom? What's your relationship with her? She was so strong that Alex stumbled and almost fell to the ground. He poked his head out from behind her and looked at me pitifully. With tears welling up in his eyes, Andrew had always doted on the child. Seeing this, he rebuked Amelia with some dissatisfaction. What are you getting angry with the child for? Unexpectedly, Amelia exploded on the spot and reached out to grab Andrew's collar regardless of the occasion. Oh, so you're already abhor me, Andrew, be honest. Do you think of her every day just like your son? If you're already so reluctant, why did you divorce her in the first place? You should have stayed with her for the rest of your life. Your mom has always praised Emma for her good parenting. Presumably, if she were still your wife, you wouldn't have to worry about your son's grades. It was really unexpected that Andrew's mother would praise me. I laughed bitterly and shook my head. I was too lazy to watch the farce of their family of three. But Amelia was acting like she had taken the wrong medicine and insisted on blocking my way. She insisted that I had made an appointment with Andrew to meet here and had deliberately embarrassed her. The son I gave birth to rushed up and called you mom. What on earth is your intention, Emma? You have to explain it clearly. Amelia had a loud voice, and many parents who came to consult about the courses couldn't help but gather around. Considering the influence on the company, I suggested that their family of three go to the conference room to talk. Amelia sneered and crossed her arms in front of her chest, looking completely unyielding. What, are you afraid of being embarrassed? If you're afraid of being embarrassed, don't do embarrassing things. Alas, everyone, look, it's this woman. She's been haunting us even 3 years after divorcing my husband. Just now, my son called her mom, and my mother-in-law has always praised her at home. Emma, if you really can't bear to part with this family, you can tell me. I can be magnanimous and make way for you. Before Amelia could finish her sentence, I poured all the hot coffee in my hand onto her face. It wasn't enough to cause serious burns, but it was enough to make her uncomfortable. Amelia was shocked at first and tried to pounce on me, but 2 colleagues stepped forward and stopped her. I looked around at the chattering crowd and remained calm. I took a step towards Amelia and looked at her with cold eyes. After I divorced Andrew, I haven't met him at all, and there has been no communication in any form. What you just said has slandered me, and I reserve the right to sue you for insulting my personality. Also, you said that your biological son called me mom. Let me ask you, in which year was Alex born? I remember that he was less than 1 year old when Andrew brought him home as an adopted child. I paused and glanced at Andrew's red face. At that time, Andrew and I had been married for 3 years. Your biological son is also Andrew's biological son. You two deceived me and made me raise your son for 6 years. I haven't settled the score with you yet. What right do you have to shout at me? 7. The content of my words was clear enough, and the people present cast contemptuous glances at Andrew and Amelia. I thought it was a scene of catching the mistress. It turns out that the mistress has come to show off. The world is in a bad state these days. Mistresses even feel proud of themselves, more so than the legitimate wife. To be honest, the original wife is really pitiful. She was deceived into raising the mistress's child for 6 years. If it were me, I would be so angry that I would want to chop up this couple, who said they want to chop me up. Come on, give it a try. Amelia was really quick to take the bait. She turned around and shouted, looking for the person who had scolded her. Andrew cared about his face the most. At this moment, he was so angry that his face turned red and his neck thickened. He grabbed Amelia's wrist and dragged her out of the hall. Alex stumbled and followed them out the door, looking back at me every few steps. I really don't understand. When I was taking care of him before, he always scolded me behind my back and took the opportunity to complain to his grandmother and father that I was not good to him. Why does he seem to be longing for me now? I'm too lazy to think too much, anyway. I will never recognize him as my son again. Unexpectedly, a few days later, Andrew and Amelia came again, and they had the nerve to ask me to tutor Alex personally. Sorry, you two, Principal Song is mainly responsible for administrative work now. We have professional teachers for teaching. They are all carefully selected young teachers with rich experience and great patience with students. As soon as the teacher who received them said this, Andrew was immediately unhappy. We're paying. Why can't you meet our request? Amelia even threatened to find the media to expose the company. saying that we were treating parents differently and discriminating against her son. 8. The young teacher had no choice but to come to me. I called them to the conference room. I could tell at a glance that Andrew and Amelia didn't really come to sign Alex up for classes. I'm afraid they felt embarrassed the other day and found an excuse to get back at me. It's not impossible for me to teach Alex's courses personally. I unexpectedly agreed to their request and attached a detailed course plan. Andrew was obviously surprised and looked at the plan suspiciously. He immediately became angry and slapped the table, shouting loudly, "Emma, you're taking me for a fool. 500 yuan per class. You really have the nerve to ask for that much? What, 500 yuan?" Amelia also shouted, "Emma, are you worth that much?" I reminded them to pay attention to their words and behavior. Since you're parents who came to consult about signing your child up for classes, please respect yourselves, otherwise, I will ask the security guards to throw you out, or, I can also call the police and charge you with picking a quarrel and provoking trouble. Andrew and Amelia glanced at the two assistants sitting next to me and fell silent. They deliberately got very close to each other, as if they were acting. Andrew even put his arm around Amelia's shoulder at her signal. After a moment of silence, he raised his eyebrows at me. "If you can ensure that Alex's grades are among the top in the class next semester, we can pay, but if you can't guarantee it, I can't." My straightforward answer left Andrew speechless. Just as he was about to get angry, Amelia pressed his hand. "I heard that you're the principal here. You're charging us such a high price. If you can't even make this guarantee, why should we trust you to take care of our child?" I nodded in agreement. "Of course, you have other options." "Amelia, are you deliberately trying to drive us away? Don't rely on the company's reputation to bully customers. Be careful, or we'll report you to the Education Bureau." I patiently motioned for them to finish reading the plan. This plan was carefully formulated by our senior teachers according to Alex's grades. Since Alex's grades in all subjects are at the bottom of the class, it's still a bit difficult for him to catch up. At least, it's impossible to make him among the top students next semester. Under their angry gazes, I continued, "But we're confident that we can make him among the top 20 students in the class when he enters junior high school. If you parents are willing to entrust your child to our institution, we will go all out and keep our promise." Andrew repeatedly flipped through the plan, frowning more and more tightly. "According to your plan, it will cost at least 130,000 yuan a year. The cost is too high." I nodded again. "High investment, high return." Director Andrew is also a senior teacher and should understand this better than me. At my words, Andrew straightened his chest and put on the airs he had at school again. "Although what you said is true, I still think the class fee you're asking for is far beyond the market value." At this point, I didn't want to talk to him anymore. I directly motioned for the assistant beside me to hand him another document. "Please take a look, you two parents. This is Principal Song's income statement for the class fees over the past year. 500 yuan per class is the lowest price she can offer." This time, Amelia also leaned forward eagerly. The expressions on their faces changed. They both looked disbelieving. "Your annual income is that high? You're not faking it, are you?" Amelia asked me. I smiled and didn't answer. The assistant patiently explained the internal culture of our group and that we would never fake anything. Andrew and Amelia sat in the conference room for 3 hours, but they still couldn't decide whether to pay. Of course, I already knew that they wouldn't pay, because I had asked my acquaintance and found out that Andrew and Amelia had no savings at all. Not only that, but they also owed a large amount of debt. Some of it was from Andrew maxing out his credit card, and some was from Amelia's gambling. I was shocked when I heard this. Amelia actually had such a bad habit. No wonder Andrew's mother didn't like her. As for Alex's studies, the two of them were even more unreliable. If Andrew's mother hadn't urged them to find a tutoring class for Alex to improve his grades, they probably wouldn't have come. 9. It was within my expectation that Andrew and Amelia wouldn't pay to sign Alex up for the class, but I didn't expect them to be so irrational that they would really find the media to expose me. A recording of our conversation in the conference room was played, with the beginning and end cut off, leading everyone to misunderstand that as the group leader, I was asking for an exorbitant price. The day after it was broadcast on the local TV station, our group received many calls from parents who wanted to withdraw their children from the classes. The reporters from the TV station also surrounded the gate of the group early in the morning, shouting that they wanted to interview me. At the same time, I received a call from Andrew. If you don't want to lose your current job, return the house that was transferred to your name, otherwise I'll ruin your reputation. I pressed the recording button and asked him with great interest, do you have the ability to do that? Andrew seemed to be motivated by me and said with certainty, don't forget that we lived together for almost 10 years. I know you like the sound of my own voice. It's easier for me to deal with you than to crush an ant. I pressed the mute button and told my assistant that we could agree to the TV station's interview request during the prime time in the evening. Almost all the people in the county were sitting in front of the TV, waiting to see the drama. When the host asked me if I had any explanation for the recording from the previous day, I took out a lawyer's letter. I'm going to sue Andrew and Amelia for damaging my reputation and demand compensation from them. I played the edited videos of Andrew and Amelia making a scene in the hall when they first came to the company and the video of me receiving them in the conference room. Due to the limited interview time, only part of the video can be shown. If you're interested in this matter, you're welcome to Xingdongfang to watch the complete video. I smiled generously and naturally at the camera. Our company will play the complete video in a loop on both sides of the hall to ensure that the image of our employees is not damaged. After the interview, almost everyone knew that I had been deceived by Andrew and had raised his illegitimate son for 6 years. People were passionately angry about the fact that the couple had fabricated facts to slander me in revenge. Too many enthusiastic citizens came to the company hall to watch the complete video. I dispatched employees from the branch company to support the reception work and took the opportunity to enroll students, completing the performance for the coming year, because at that time, surveillance cameras hadn't been widely installed across the country. At least, there were no surveillance cameras in every office of the primary school where Andrew worked. Therefore, Andrew never expected that there would be surveillance cameras in the company hall and the conference room, which recorded his vicious face. Insiders revealed that he had been talked to by the school leaders later, and the demotion was the greatest leniency for him, and Amelia became the target of public condemnation. She had to sneak out like a rat. Some people even threw stinky eggs and rotten vegetable leaves at their door. When Andrew came to the company again, furious, and wanted to talk to me about withdrawing the lawsuit, I refused to see him. The next day, his mother came with Alex. The old woman led her grandson and waited outside the company, only to be told that I had already resigned. The newly appointed principal clearly stated that if they dared to cause trouble in the company and affect the company's reputation, they would be arrested by the police. At the mention of the police, Alex was so scared that he shrank back and shouted for his grandmother to take him home. When the young teacher vividly told me all this, I had already bought a single-family villa in the provincial capital and was preparing to start the renovation and stockpile supplies. 10. Although according to the time in my previous life, the extreme cold apocalypse was still a few years away. After being reborn, I found that the global weather was changing abnormally. Various meteorological disasters had occurred in some areas of many countries. The extreme cold weather was likely to arrive earlier, and I had to implement my plan ahead of time. Since it was a single-family villa, the decoration workers would start work according to my instructions. To avoid their suspicion, I hired 3 decoration companies. One was responsible for the doors, windows, and basement. One was responsible for the solar panels and the multifunctional water purifier, and the other was responsible for the soft decoration. The housing prices had risen sharply in recent years, and my savings were not much left after buying the house. Fortunately, the demolition policy was quickly implemented, and I received more than 1.5 million yuan in demolition compensation. I took 500,000 yuan to the bank to buy national bonds and gold bars, with modern technology. As long as ordinary people could survive the extreme cold weather, social order would surely be restored. I invested all the remaining money in the renovation and stockpiling of supplies. It took a full 2 years, and my very own doomsday fortress was finally completed. Inside, there were ample supplies of food, water, and medicine, as well as some easy-to-operate medical equipment. At least, it could ensure that I could live there safely for 50 years. I gave each member of the renovation team a generous red envelope and reminded them to go home and spend more time with their families when they had the chance. The meteorological station soon released the latest scope of the blizzard. Both of my parents were medical workers, and they had left me as early as 2003. I moved into the villa with their urns. afraid of being lonely. I picked up 2 cats and a stray dog from the roadside to keep me company. The moment the anti-theft doors and windows were locked, my heart felt incomparably peaceful. In the days before the blizzard hit, people were still sighing that this once-in-century snow was an auspicious omen, but soon, with the news that power supplies were strained across the country, travel was difficult in some areas due to snow accumulation, and there was an urgent shortage of daily necessities. People began to feel anxious and restless, however. The country also quickly introduced corresponding policies to ensure the minimum living standards of the people. For 2 consecutive months, the most broadcast news on TV and the internet was about incidents where houses were collapsed by snow in certain places, and rescue efforts were ongoing intensively, or it was about how, due to consecutive days of power outages, heating could no longer be guaranteed in many places. And there were frequent accidents caused by residents using charcoal fires for heating. In the face of disasters, people are always small and vulnerable. I turned off the TV and the internet, and holding a little calico cat in my arms, I walked to the window. The snow outside was about to cover the windows on the first floor. The howling north wind blew the broken branches of trees and fallen store signs all over the sky. There had been no pedestrians or vehicles on the street for a month. Occasionally, fire engines and police cars could be seen, but they all needed snowplows to clear the way in front. When the phone rang, I was a little surprised to see a strange number on the screen. Although communication signals were still temporarily maintained. Who would call me at this time? You know, in this situation, there aren't many households whose phones can still be charged. I answered the call and pressed the speakerphone button. As soon as I said, "Hello," Andrew's angry roar came from the other end. "Emma, you vicious woman, do you want to kill our whole family?" 11, Andrew ranted non-stop, and the cat in my arms arched its back and flattened its ears in fright. "Emma, if you have the guts, hide from me for the rest of your life. You're a jinx. I've never had any luck since I married you, even after we got divorced. You still want to screw me over. Emma, you've made our whole family like this. You won't die a good death." The last sentence was shouted by Amelia. I pieced together the general information from their words. It turned out that after the incident 2 years ago, Amelia was fired by the hotel. When she looked for a new job, she was often recognized. No hotel was willing to hire a woman who had destroyed someone else's family as a manager, even if she was willing to lower her standards and work as a waitress. No one dared to employ her, for fear of affecting the business. In the end, Amelia could only sell clothes in a shopping mall or work as a server in some small hot pot restaurants. Once, after being recognized by a customer, she got into an argument. Amelia actually overturned the hot pot and scalded the customer. Just then, the demolition compensation money arrived, and the other party sued Amelia in court. The court directly froze her and Andrew's accounts. They had to pay hundreds of thousands of yuan for the customer's surgery and skin grafting. "Emma, all of this is because of you. You have to pay me back this money." Amelia was still screaming hysterically on the other end. I looked at the call duration on my phone, really worried that their phones would run out of battery. "I don't have any money. If you have the guts, come and get me." My words silenced them completely. Before they could say anything else, I hung up the phone and blocked the number. I still haven't avenged the hatred of how they killed me in my previous life. Yet they dare to shift the blame. A week later, the blizzard suddenly stopped. Under the government's organization, snowplows began to appear on the streets and alleys one after another, and people started to go out to seek help. On the internet, some people posted that the blizzard-ridden doomsday had passed, and the survivors would welcome a brand new spring. But I knew that the real extreme cold was approaching quietly. The snow stopping at this time was like the calm before a tsunami. The real disaster was about to begin. I quickly posted an article on my social media account, reminding the public to take advantage of this time to stockpile food and water and then find a place to shelter from the wind and keep warm. The government also announced several shelters at the same time, almost in every region. It seemed that this was a prepared battle for survival between humanity and nature. Less than an hour after the article was published, many people left comments. "Amaya, my power was out at home before, and I couldn't get in touch with you. Now that the power has been temporarily restored, I have to thank you first for your previous reminder. Amaya, I listened to you and stocked a lot of food at home, but the current heating can't keep up. I'm really afraid that my family won't be able to survive the upcoming extreme cold. Teacher Amaya, I've always thought your articles were well written. I didn't expect you to be a prophet, Amaya. My parents took your advice early on. Our basement is now stocked with a lot of supplies, enough for our family to last a year or two. Ever since I worked at Xingdongfang, I had opened a social media account online, and the most played videos were about life skills for surviving in the doomsday. Over time, the number of people following me increased. After I resigned, I began to gradually convey information about the upcoming extreme cold to everyone. Of course, some people believed it, while others didn't, but all of this didn't matter to me. I just wanted to save as many lives as I could. When posting these messages, I never revealed my personal information, and no one knew that I was the one who posted them. 12. I didn't have time to reply to everyone's messages one by one. I just took the time to upload some more measures on how to use existing resources to keep warm. Soon, the articles and videos I published were actually used by the government and broadcast on TV and official websites. This also included videos from many other bloggers, which together formed a collection of survival skills in the current harsh environment. The doomsday was cruel, but people's hearts were warm. The temperature continued to drop sharply, and the meteorological station issued low temperature warnings for several consecutive days, after half a month of mobilization by the government. The shelters everywhere were almost full. If Andrew and Amelia had listened to the advice and gone to the shelters at this time, perhaps their family could have survived, but they persistently found the address where I lived. It was hard to imagine how they managed to travel all the way here. Moreover, I had never told my address to any friend. I didn't know what method they used to find it. When I heard the alarm from the gate, I saw the four of them on the monitor. They were all wrapped up like Zongzi, carrying bags and backpacks. Emma, open the door for me. Andrew slapped the anti-theft door hard and shouted at the top of his lungs. I made myself a cup of hot coffee, turned on all the surveillance cameras around the villa, and calmly watched the farce outside the door. Just at midnight today, the meteorological station urgently reported that the second wave of heavy snow would arrive in various parts of the world one after another. At this moment, snowflakes were falling in large flakes. The four of them stood at the gate for less than 10 minutes and were already covered in snow. Seeing that no one paid attention to them, Andrew and Amelia walked around the villa, muttering whether they had come to the wrong place. I saw Andrew take out a piece of paper from his pocket and compare it with the house number of my place repeatedly. That's right, this is the place. This bitch. She must be deliberately not opening the door for us. She wants to freeze us to death. Call the police and say that she deliberately tricked us into coming to her for shelter, leaving us homeless now. Amelia whispered in Andrew's ear. Don't you have photos of Alex when he was a child with her? Say that she's Alex's biological mother. In this situation, the police won't have time to verify. We'll accuse her of abandoning a minor child and force the police to make her open the door. Andrew thought for a moment, and a vicious light flashed in his eyes. Right, as soon as she opens the door, we'll rush in. I heard that Emma has stocked a lot of food in the villa, enough for us to eat for more than 10 years. She knew this was going to happen but didn't say anything. She's so heartless that she deserves to die. Although they spoke in a low voice, my surveillance equipment was top-notch. I could see their every move clearly, and every word they said reached my ears. I shook my head, finding it ridiculous. You know, at this time, the People's Police were the busiest. They had to maintain order in the shelters, and there were countless cases of looting in various places. They couldn't even handle all the important matters, so who had the time to deal with them? Just as I was laughing at how self-important they were, Andrew's angry curse suddenly came from the monitor. It turned out that their phones were too frozen to turn on. Now I didn't have to worry anymore. Let them freeze outside. In this life, they should taste what it's like to freeze to death. 13. The snow was falling heavier and heavier. I took a hot bath, then snuggled up on the sofa bed watching Empresses in the Palace and had a comfortable sleep. When I opened my eyes again, it was already the next day. I had thought that Andrew's family would be almost dead from the cold. Unexpectedly, not only were they alive, but they had also managed to get into my neighbor's house. My neighbors were a middle-aged couple. Because the husband had been injured in his early years and had trouble walking, they usually had the habit of stockpiling food. When I was renovating my house, they were also doing the same, and we borrowed a lot of ideas from each other. For example, we both installed solar panels and wind turbines. A month before the blizzard, I persuaded them to stockpile more supplies on the pretext that it was inconvenient to go out due to the bad weather. After the blizzard, we had been keeping in touch and greeting each other every day had almost become a part of our daily lives. At this moment, the couple was excitedly calling me, Thong, your son is fine, your ex-husband's family is also very responsible, they've gone to a lot of trouble to bring him to you safely in this weather. As she spoke, the wife, Abigail, brought Alex in front of the camera for me to see. Alex was in the 3rd grade of junior high school this year. He had grown into a young man and had changed a lot in appearance. His voice was so rough and hoarse, like the sound of an old phonograph record after wear and tear, that it startled me when he opened his mouth. Mom, don't you want Alex anymore? Alex misses you so much. Alex was extremely excited to see me. And the way he called me Mom was full of sincerity. In front of Abigail and her husband, Arthur, I could only force a smile and comfort Alex first. I promised that I would pick him up and let him live in the villa as soon as possible and told him not to be too naughty at the neighbor's house. If I didn't say this, I was worried that their family would do something bad to Abigail and her husband. The weather is too cold, and the anti-theft door of my house is frozen. I'm already trying to open it. As soon as the door is open, I'll pick you all up. After hearing my words, Alex turned around and showed off to Andrew. I knew Mom loves me the most. Dad, we'll be able to live at Mom's house soon. As soon as he ran away, Amelia's face appeared on the screen. Although she didn't say anything, her eyes were full of triumph. She took the phone from Abigail on the pretext of wanting to catch up with me. Emma, it doesn't really matter whether we go to your place or not. I think the Moes don't lack food or electricity here. We can stay here for a while longer. I'm just the kind of person who can't keep my mouth shut. I might reveal all your secrets. I glared at Amelia angrily. Will your family ever stop? If you hadn't gone too far, I wouldn't have left the county. After the snow stops, I still need to rely on the Abigails for my future work. You didn't know, did you? They are senior executives of a top domestic education and training group. For a child like Alex who has difficulty studying, if he is handed over to them, even if he can't get into Tsinghua University or Peking University, his grades won't be too bad. I wasn't lying. The Abigails were indeed very outstanding, but I also said this on purpose to make Amelia think that I cared a lot about my impression in front of the Abigails. For the sake of my future work, I would also find a way to pick them up and let them stay at my place. Before Amelia could say anything, I hung up. Although the air conditioner had been on in the room, I still broke out in a cold sweat on my back. This damned family must have used the photos of me and Alex when he was a child to deceive Abigail into opening the door for them. In my previous life, I gave my all to Andrew and his son, but they still had the heart to plot and freeze me to death at home. In the face of survival, they might not hesitate to do something cruel to strangers. The Abigails were very nice people. Just thinking that they might be implicated because of me made my heart ache. I had to find a way to notify the Abigails and tell them to be on guard against Andrew's family. Suddenly, I remembered that Abigail had mentioned that her husband had once worked in France. Fortunately, when I stocked books, I was afraid of getting bored, so I actually stocked some French novels translated into Chinese. I quickly took them off the bookshelf, pieced together a sentence, and typed it into my phone in advance. Sure enough, when I called Abigail again, Amelia was standing behind her. 14. I ignored her and just showed the message to Abigail. This is the prompt message displayed on my anti-theft door. I don't understand what it means. Can you ask your husband if he can help me fix the lock? I'm really anxious to pick up my child and bring him home. Abigail frowned as soon as she saw the content, but she quickly smiled at me. I don't understand it either. But it shouldn't be a big problem. The after-sales service for this brand of anti-theft doors is very good. It's just that it's very difficult to get someone to come and repair it under the current circumstances. I also apologized with a worried look. I hope this hint is helpful. Otherwise, I'll have to trouble you to take care of my son for a few more days. Abigail nodded and went to call her husband. Amelia stayed in front of the camera alone and asked me, Emma, what are you up to? What's this string of things? I gave her a dirty look and said, if I could understand it, why would I ask others? Then I asked her if she had talked nonsense to Abigail, deliberately stalling her so that she couldn't follow Abigail. but just as I said a few words to her, another number initiated a video call to me on my phone. The last 4 digits of the number were exactly the same as Abigail's. I guessed it was her husband's phone. I used the excuse of going to the bathroom to end the call with Amelia. After reconnecting with Abigail, I immediately asked her where she and her husband were and if they were safe. There is an anti-theft door installed between the first and second floors. Just now, that family was having a meal downstairs, and we took the opportunity to go up to the second floor and lock the door. I asked again, what about the key? Is there a spare key downstairs? Abigail shook her head and said, I brought the spare key up when I came upstairs. Hearing what she said, I let out a long sigh of relief. I knew that with Abigail's intelligence, when she saw that I said there was danger, she would definitely take measures. I apologized to them on the video and then simply and directly told them what Andrew's family had done. They might do something like killing and robbing to survive. So, you must not listen to anything they say. And under no circumstances should you open the door for them. Abigail and her husband looked solemn after hearing this. Just then, Andrew's voice came from outside the door. Mo, why did you lock the door? My luggage is still in the guest room. You have to open the door and let me get my things. Aunt Mo, my homework books are in the suitcase. I need to do my homework. Mo, my antihypertensive medicine is also in the guest room. I really need to take my medicine. I can't do without it. Andrew's family tried every means to coax Abigail into opening the door for them. Fortunately, Abigail and her husband were rational and refused to open the door no matter what they said. As for the antihypertensive medicine and the homework books, they directly threw Andrew's family's suitcases out of the second-floor window onto the snow in the yard. If they wanted them, they could go and pick them up themselves. 15. Soon. Amelia used Abigail's phone to call me on video and question me about what I had said to Abigail. I didn't want to leave danger for Abigail and her husband, so I persuaded them to come to my house. I even opened my anti-theft door to let them see it on the video. The anti-theft door only led to the yard, and there were still 2 more doors to get into the room. I wasn't worried that they would hurt me. But Andrew noticed the food and water stockpiled in the kitchen. He thought that with these supplies, his family could safely get through the extreme cold, and they didn't need to come to my house at all. Just you wait, Emma. Sooner or later, the sky will clear. If you have the guts, don't leave that door for the rest of your life. Then we'll see how I deal with you. After Andrew finished speaking, he hung up the video. I was so angry that I almost threw my phone, but soon I learned from Abigail that a large amount of food and water in their house was actually on the second floor, and just like my house, the power supply on the first and second floors of their house was connected in parallel. In a critical moment, they could cut off the power supply to the first floor to reduce the load on the generator. Abigail also comforted me. Fong, don't worry, as long as we don't open the door, they can't get to the second floor. After hearing this, I immediately proposed. Cut off the power supply to the first floor and force them to leave your house. Mo, they are devils, and you must do as I say to drive them away. Abigail hesitated and said, if we cut off the power now, they will freeze to death. She was too kind. I didn't persuade her anymore. After all, I couldn't force her to kill people, but I could do it myself. My original plan was to control the drone to damage the power supply lines on the first floor of Abigail's house, but before I could do it, thunder came from the sky. It was unusual to have thunder in a snowy day, and the thunder just hit the roof of Abigail's house. The external generator was struck and started to spark. After the thunder stopped, I quickly had a video call with Abigail and was told that the wind turbine was severely damaged, and her house was completely without power. The blizzard made the sky gloomy all the time, and the solar panels had long been useless. Looking at the despair on the faces of Abigail and her husband, my heart ached again. Don't worry, I will find a way to save you. So, I used the drone to deliver candles and power banks to Abigail's house through the window. I also sent them hot food and water, as well as a large number of warm patches I had stockpiled. Twice a day, I ensured that they could eat hot food to preserve their body heat and keep in touch with me. In addition, I gave them an axe so that they could chop up the useless furniture on the second floor to start a fire for warmth. But this was not a long-term solution. The meteorological station predicted that the temperature would drop to -50 degrees in the next 10 days. In this situation, without heating, people could easily freeze to death. Abigail's house was already as cold as an ice cellar on the first day after the power outage. 16. Finally, I thought of sending a soft ladder to Abigail and her husband, allowing them to escape from the second-floor window and come to my house. They agreed. When the family downstairs fell asleep at night, they installed the soft ladder. They tied a safety rope around their waists and slowly slid down the soft ladder. Finally, when they reached the ground, Abigail supported her husband and started walking towards my house with great difficulty. The snow had already buried all the buildings on the first floor. I tied a long rope to the drone and let Abigail hold one end to guide them forward, but just as they were about to reach the door of my villa, something unexpected happened. The cunning Andrew caught up with them. Abigail and her husband were walking slowly, and Andrew used a door panel as a snowboard and was about to find their location soon. When I saw him getting closer on the drone's image, my heart was in my throat. In a hurry, I let out the dog Lele that I had adopted. "Stop that man, don't let him in," I pointed at Andrew's figure on the video, pinning all my hopes on Lele. Although Lele wasn't very strong, it was a pure Chinese rural dog and had great fighting power regardless of its size. It quickly rushed into the snow and pounced towards Andrew's position. At the same time, I controlled the drone to send a signal to Abigail, urging them to hurry up. Finally, they safely entered the anti-theft door. The barking of the dog and Andrew's cursing could still be heard from the drone, but when I turned the drone's camera, I only saw Andrew sitting on the door panel alone, waving a baseball bat, and Lele was nowhere to be seen. "Lele," I called it anxiously. I vaguely heard a few whimpers, but still couldn't see where it was. Abigail and her husband had entered the living room, and the anti-theft door was locked again. Andrew angrily returned to Abigail's house. I saw a long trail of blood where he had walked. Tears welled up in my eyes. Abigail came over and held my hand to comfort me. "Don't be sad, maybe it's still alive, but just can't move for a while. Yes, it's just injured. I will save it." I sent the drone out again, tying pieces of meat to the rope and searching inch by inch in the snow. Finally, just before dawn, I found Lele. It clenched the rope with its last bit of strength and was dragged back to the door by me. It was seriously injured. Both of its front limbs were broken, and its spine had collapsed. It was obvious that Andrew had been extremely cruel. Fortunately, Abigail's husband said that he had volunteered at a rescue station in France and was confident that he could save Lele. 17. When the temperature dropped to -60 degrees, there was no difference between day and night. Through the drone, we saw flames in Abigail's house. When we got closer, we could see figures moving on the second floor. They must have broken the anti-theft door. Fortunately, you left in advance. I was relieved. Abigail and her husband also felt the same way. Human nature can't stand the test at this time, but God won't let any evil person go. The drone continued to approach the window, and finally, we could see the situation inside clearly. The luxurious house was almost ransacked. They almost burned down the load-bearing walls. Even so, they were still huddled together from the cold. And through my observations over the past few days, Andrew's mother had been lying on the sofa in a fixed position for a long time. 18. One day, Alex noticed my drone. He wrote a few big words on a piece of paper with a burned stick and held it up at the window for me to see. "Mom, I was wrong. Mom, love me again." I was speechless. Just as I was about to withdraw the drone, there was a shocking message written on another piece of paper that Alex held up. "Is it only if I kill them that you can forgive me?" My hand shook, and the drone almost crashed. Alex wasn't just talking. The day before they burned all the things that could be burned in Abigail's house, Alex killed his biological parents, influenced by others. Andrew had also been unenthusiastic about his work and had been asking around about the demolition all day long. He took action when they were vomiting and having diarrhea and had no strength left. I didn't watch the whole process, but I recorded it all with the drone, planning to save it and call the police. After killing 2 people, Alex wrote big words with their blood again and held them up for me to see. "They taught me to do that in my previous life. They were the ones who killed you. Mom, I avenged you. Please forgive me. I also want to study hard. I also want to go to university and get a good job. They destroyed me. They deserve to die." My blood seemed to freeze. Alex had also awakened the memories of his previous life. In his previous life, he was God's favored one, someone who is outstanding and favored by fate. Although I had been strict with him since he was a child, he grew up with a lot of praise, but in this life, he had never won a single award since he was a child and had hardly been praised by teachers and his peers. He had been scolded both at home and outside because of his poor academic performance. The huge gap finally made him realize who was really good to him, but it was too late. After killing people, Alex became crazy. He often shouted, "Mom," at the window and cursed at the corpses of Andrew and Amelia. Finally, when the temperature dropped to -70 degrees, whether intentionally or because he was confused due to his illness, Alex set Abigail's house on fire and died in the house. 19. The extreme cold lasted for 8 months. The temperature dropped to -100 degrees. In the last period of time, Abigail, her husband, and I, along with the cats and dogs, hid in the thickly insulated basement. The moment the sun shone on the ground again, warmth spread through my body. Looking at the blinding sunlight, tears filled my eyes. If possible, I would rather have never experienced all this. How wonderful life would be without hatred.